Could Saturday morning cartoons get away with more than modern television admits? Filmation once gave children space wars, dangerous criminals, questionable history lessons, frightening moral stories, and stereotypes nobody at the network seemed worried about. They are not all forbidden today, but broadcast exactly as originally made? Before we open the Filmation vault, like this video, and subscribe to the channel, because some of these forgotten cartoons are almost impossible to believe. Number 18. The Hardy Boys, 1969. Imagine solving an international mystery immediately after performing a cheerful pop song. That was the bizarre formula behind this animated version of Frank and Joe Hardy, who traveled with friends as a rock band while uncovering smugglers, secret passages, hidden treasure, and suspicious strangers. Each half-hour normally contained 2 short mysteries adapted from the famous books, with live-action musical performances placed between them. A memorable adventure sends the boys searching through caves and hidden coastal locations, while the villains repeatedly underestimate them. The danger is real, but the mystery often pauses long enough for the band to promote another song. The series deserves credit for including Pete Jones, one of the earlier black recurring characters in American Saturday morning animation. However, other details have aged badly. A character is openly named Chubby Morton. Female characters receive far less agency, and adult criminals constantly threaten teenagers who appear to have almost no meaningful supervision. A modern adaptation could keep the mysteries and music. The body-based nickname, shallow supporting roles, casual child endangerment, and record-selling structure would almost certainly be rewritten. This forgotten experiment lasted only 17 episodes, but it arrived alongside Scooby-Doo and briefly offered a stranger version of the teenage mystery formula. Number 17. My Favorite Martians, 1973. Turning a popular sitcom into a children's cartoon was already common, but this production added younger relatives, alien pets, a chimpanzee, and enough strange inventions to make the original program look realistic. Uncle Martin remained stranded on Earth with reporter Tim O'Hara, yet the animated series introduced Martin's nephew Andy. Because Andy possessed only one antenna, the story treated his powers as weaker and less reliable. A bouncing Martian pet named Oki joined him, while Tim gained a niece, and Detective Brennan received both a teenage son and a pet chimp called Chump. One of the show's funniest recurring situations involved Andy using an ability without fully understanding it. Furniture moved, people vanished, or ordinary household problems expanded into neighborhood emergencies while Martin tried to hide their alien identity. Modern children's television would probably question the repeated idea that physical difference automatically makes someone inferior. It would also reconsider using a chimpanzee as a comedy pet and the way adults dismiss the younger characters until everything goes wrong. Much of the series reportedly reused scripts considered for a 4th season of the live-action sitcom. That gave it an unusual feeling. Adult situation comedy plots disguised beneath bright colors and antenna jokes. Still watching? Then subscribe and tell us in the comments which Filmation cartoon you remember most clearly. Your support helps us rescue more forgotten television before it completely disappears. Number 16. The New Adventures of Gilligan, 1974. Nothing says educational children's entertainment like trapping 7 adults on an island and allowing their worst personality traits to ruin every rescue attempt. The animated continuation brought back most of the original cast, including Bob Denver as Gilligan, Alan Hale Jr. as the skipper, and Russell Johnson as the professor. Ginger and Mary Ann were both voiced by Jane Webb, while a monkey named Snubby was added for younger viewers. In the memorable treasure episode, the castaways discover a chest filled with gold. Greed immediately destroys their cooperation, and fear spreads when they become convinced that a pirate ghost is haunting them. The professor eventually uses glowing paint and Gilligan as part of a trick designed to expose their foolish behavior. Every story ended with a lesson about sharing, honesty, patience, or cooperation. Yet those messages arrived after long scenes of shouting, manipulation, class snobbery, and physical slapstick. The program even carried an adult laugh track, telling children exactly when they were supposed to enjoy somebody's humiliation. A modern version could still work, but the gender roles, wealthy howl caricatures, constant insults directed at Gilligan, and uncontrolled animal sidekick would receive major changes. Filmation also lacked the rights to the original theme song, forcing it to open with a strange spoken poem instead. Number 15. The Brady Kids, 1972. Once the familiar children left their television home, normal family comedy disappeared almost immediately. They formed a pop group, befriended magical animals, traveled through time, met superheroes, and occasionally left Earth altogether. The cartoon gave the 6 Brady children 3 unusual companions: Mop Top the dog, talking pandas Ping and Pong, and a magical bird named Marlin. Their adventures included journeys into ancient Greece, space missions, bank robberies, and encounters with famous characters. One memorable 2-part story, Jungle Bungle, sends the family into a wild environment where the children must rely on teamwork rather than their parents. The situation resembles an adventure serial more than an episode of The Brady Bunch, with constant peril and magical coincidences replacing suburban misunderstandings. A modern network would probably ask why 6 children repeatedly disappear on dangerous missions without Mike, Carol, or Alice noticing. The pandas also communicate through exaggerated sounds and behavior that would require greater cultural care today. Behind the scenes, several original cast members voiced their characters during the first season. Barry Williams, Christopher Knight, and Maureen McCormick were replaced for the final episodes following a contract dispute. That change makes the second season feel like an imitation of a cartoon that was already imitating a sitcom. Only 22 episodes were produced, but the show became strange enough to launch another forgotten Filmation series. Number 14, Mission Magic, 1973. A teacher saying a rhyme to her cat was all it took to transport an entire classroom into another dimension. Permission forms were apparently unnecessary. Miss Tickle led 6 students known as the Adventurers Club. Whenever trouble appeared, her cat Tut-Tut became active. A magical doorway opened, and the children stepped into worlds filled with backwards kingdoms, living toys, strange rulers, and musical problems. Waiting on the other side was an animated version of singer Rick Springfield. He played himself, performed songs, and contacted the children whenever a magical land required help. The show therefore functioned as fantasy adventure, classroom story, and weekly music promotion at the same time. The unforgettable opening transformation shows Miss Tickle drawing a doorway while Tut-Tut changes from an ordinary pet into her supernatural guide. Seconds later, the students enter an unknown world with complete confidence that their teacher knows what she is doing. Today, the lack of boundaries would be difficult to ignore. A teacher repeatedly removes children from school, takes them into dangerous locations, and returns without administrators or parents asking questions. The students also have very broad personalities, rather than meaningful individual development. Modern broadcasters might accept the fantasy, but the celebrity marketing and unsupervised travel would need clearer framing. 16 episodes aired, leaving behind what feels like the magic school bus after an extremely unusual dream. Number 13, The Secret Lives of Waldo Kitty, 1975. A timid real cat would be bullied by a bulldog, stare into the distance, and suddenly become the fearless hero of a completely different story. Waldo lived with Felicia, while the aggressive Tyrone made their ordinary lives miserable. Whenever Waldo felt powerless, he escaped into fantasies where he became Catman, Robin Cat, Catsan, the Lone Kitty, or another parody hero capable of defeating a villain resembling Tyrone. The most memorable transitions begin with live-action animals. Waldo reacts to a threat, the screen moves into animation, and the frightened pet transforms into a confident adventurer. The fantasy normally teaches him enough courage to face the real problem. The concept was openly inspired by James Thurber's The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. However, Filmation produced the program without permission from Thurber's estate. His widow, Helen Thurber, filed a lawsuit, arguing that the cartoon distorted the original work. Filmation eventually settled and changed the syndicated title to The New Adventures of Waldo Kitty. That legal history alone would make a modern studio extremely cautious. Rights departments now examine names, premises, promotional language, character similarities, and even implied associations before production begins. The live animal sequences would create additional welfare concerns, especially because Lou Scheimer later recalled that the bulldog playing Tyrone sometimes chased the cats during filming. Only 13 episodes survived this strange collision of parody, fantasy, real animals, and copyright trouble. Number 12, Hero High, 1981. Long before superhero schools became a familiar idea, Filmation filled one with teenagers named Captain California, Glorious Gal, Dirty Trixie, Rex Ruthless, Misty Magic, and Weatherman. Students attended classes designed to control their abilities while dealing with rivalries, romance, school events, and villains. Some characters sincerely wanted to become heroes. Others treated superpowers like a shortcut to popularity. A memorable story called A Fistful of Knuckles turns a simple school conflict into a Western-style confrontation. Characters pose, threaten, misunderstand one another, and eventually learn a lesson after their powers make the situation much worse. The strangest feature was the format. Animated stories appeared beside live-action musical and comedy segments as part of the Kids Superpower Hour with Shazam. An adult laugh track instructed children when to react, while performers in bright costumes acted like a superhero version of a school variety show. The project had originally been planned as another Archie-related program. When Filmation's rights expired, the studio reportedly replaced those familiar characters with new creations at the last moment. That helps explain why several students feel like exaggerated Riverdale personalities wearing capes. A modern version could develop the school, but names based on appearance, morality, or gender stereotypes would need revision. The laugh track, shallow villains, and sudden moral conclusions would probably disappear as well. Number 11. Frady Cat, 1975. Every number from 1 to 8 became a supernatural threat for one extremely nervous alley cat. After using 8 of his 9 lives, Frady wanted only food, sleep, and enough safety to protect his final chance. Unfortunately, whenever he accidentally said a number, or even a word sounding like one, the ghost of a previous life appeared. Those ancestors included personalities from different historical eras. They were supposed to help, but their outdated advice normally made Frady's situation worse. A simple visit to a shop could end with angry dogs, dangerous machinery, collapsing shelves, and several ghosts arguing over the correct solution. The funniest recurring scene was also the darkest. Frady would realize that an innocent sentence contained a forbidden number, freeze in terror, and watch another ancestor materialize. Children were essentially laughing at a character experiencing constant fear about losing his last life. Modern writers could preserve the clever wordplay, but they would probably reduce the non-stop anxiety and physical punishment. Frady is chased, struck, trapped, and threatened in almost every 6-minute short. His frightened speech and Don Knotts-style vocal imitation are also used as the central joke rather than treated with sympathy. Only 12 shorts were completed before the parent program was reduced and the remaining episodes were abandoned. Number 10. MUSH, 1975. Somebody looked at an adult comedy about medical workers during wartime and decided the obvious children's version needed sled dogs. Set at a frozen outpost in Upper Sabunia, this animated parody followed Colonel Flake, Major Hank Sideburns, Cold Lips, General Upheaval, Trooper Joe, Bullseye, Hilda, and Sonar. Its title meant Mangy Unwanted Shabby Heroes, removing any doubt about how the characters would be treated. Rather than carefully adapting the themes of MASH, the shorts converted military pressure into slapstick. Officers shouted impossible instructions, equipment malfunctioned, dogs crashed through snow, and the medical setting became a source of fast jokes. One representative sequence has the team preparing for an urgent mission, while superior officers create more confusion than the emergency itself. Sleds collide, characters misunderstand commands, and the people supposedly running the outpost become its biggest problem. The concept would face immediate obstacles today. A program for young children would need to explain why war, medical emergencies, and exhausted personnel are being used as a comedy playground. Turning recognizable adult characters into dogs would also attract difficult questions about parody rights and audience targeting. The shorts appeared inside Uncle Croc's Block, a bitter spoof of children's television fitted with an adult laugh track. That parent series was shortened and canceled before completing its planned run, leaving several MUSH segments unfinished or difficult to locate. It is not the violence that makes this one unlikely to return unchanged. It is the completely confused audience. The humor assumes that viewers know an adult television series that children were never expected to understand. Number 9. Web Woman, 1978. Long before every superhero had a connected cinematic universe, a NASA scientist became a costumed guardian after rescuing an insect-like visitor. Kelly Webster received a special ring that allowed her to draw on abilities associated with insects. After transforming into Web Woman, she communicated with small creatures, traveled in a web-shaped vehicle, and received missions from the mysterious Scarab. A memorable transformation begins when Kelly raises the ring and calls upon the insects of the world to lend her their powers. The sequence is dramatic, sincere, and wonderfully strange, presenting bees, ants, spiders, and other tiny creatures as one enormous supernatural network. The program's biggest problem was not its heroine. Kelly was intelligent, independent, and professionally accomplished, at a time when female action leads were limited. The trouble appeared around intellectual property. Marvel introduced Spider-Woman during the same general period, reportedly motivated in part by a desire to secure the name before another company could use it. Filmation's anthology also faced legal complaints from DC over other heroes that appeared too similar to established characters. A modern studio would require armies of attorneys before approving the name, costume, powers, vehicle, villains, and promotional images. Even accidental similarities can become expensive when superhero brands are involved. The environmental message might still work today, but the show's broad claim that one heroine controls the powers of the entire insect kingdom would probably receive clearer scientific framing. 10 segments were produced as part of Tarzan and the Super 7, leaving Webwoman stranded between pioneering representation and corporate trademark warfare. Number 8. Space Sentinels, 1977. 3 figures remembered as mythological legends were actually immortal guardians selected by an alien computer. At least, that was Filmation's explanation. Hercules possessed enormous strength. Mercury could move at incredible speed. Astrea could transform into living creatures. Working from a hidden base with Sentinel-1 and the maintenance robot MO, they protected Earth from aliens, ancient beings, monsters, and threats moving through time. The series was progressive in one important respect. Its central team included heroes presented with different racial backgrounds, and Astrea was not merely a person waiting to be rescued. She regularly used strategy and transformation abilities to save the others. Yet the writing still depended on broad cultural shorthand. Complex mythology from different civilizations was pulled into one science fiction explanation, suggesting that legendary figures were misunderstood space agents. History, religion, folklore, and alien technology became interchangeable whenever a story needed an impressive villain. A memorable episode sends Hercules and Astrea after the escaping Kronos through prehistoric periods. They move between eras with little concern for changing history, battling creatures and using powers in front of people who might later convert the encounter into myth. Another story has Astrea kidnapped by a civilization beneath Earth because her energy is needed to maintain a heat shield. Although the heroes rescue her, the setup turns the team's most visibly distinctive member into a power source for an isolated society. Modern writers might keep the diverse team but consult historians and cultural specialists before blending real traditions into generic space fantasy. The concept could survive. The casual mythology blender probably would not. Number 7. The Freedom Force, 1978. Gathering Hercules, Merlin, Sinbad, Isis, and a giant armored hero called Super Samurai sounds less like a television pitch and more like a child selecting random figures from a toy box. Only 5 episodes were produced, but Filmation treated the team like the greatest alliance in human history. Isis controlled elemental forces and usually guided the mission. Hercules supplied strength, Merlin provided magic, Sinbad brought adventurous confidence, and Super Samurai transformed from a young man named Toshi into an enormous warrior. That last character would generate the most discussion today. Super Samurai was introduced as a heroic Japanese figure, yet his design, speech, transformation, and entire identity were assembled from broad Western ideas about Japanese culture. Even the name reduces a complex historical role to a superhero category. In The Scarlet Samurai, another young man desires similar powers after witnessing Toshi's transformation. The episode gives Super Samurai personal conflict, but it also doubles down on giant armored figures, honor language, ancient mysticism, and generalized Eastern imagery. Sinbad creates a similar problem. Stories inspired by Middle Eastern literary traditions are compressed into a sword-swinging sailor whose cultural background remains mostly decoration. Merlin and Hercules receive equally simplified treatment, but Western audiences are more accustomed to seeing those figures endlessly reinvented. A modern reboot might still unite legendary heroes, though it would distinguish folklore from history and give each character a specific cultural foundation. Writers would also need to decide whether Isis refers to the ancient Egyptian goddess, Filmation's earlier television heroine, or a new interpretation. The original team had real charm and one of Filmation's most unusual lineups. It also demonstrated how quickly good intentions can become stereotypes when research stops at costumes and catchphrases. Number 6. Groovy Ghoulies, 1970. Monsters who once frightened entire generations became clumsy musicians living together inside Horrible Hall. Drac played the organ, Frankie behaved like an oversized child, and Wolfie delivered rapid jokes. They shared their home with Hagatha, Bella Lugosly, Mummy, Bonaparte, Batso, Ratso, and enough other creatures to turn every episode into a supernatural variety show. The series mixed short comedy sketches, terrible puns, musical performances, dancing, and slapstick. Instead of hunting victims, the monsters formed bands with names such as the Bare Bones Band and performed songs including Witch's Brew and Ghoulie Garden. One memorable sequence places the monsters on stage, while skeletons, ghosts, and strange creatures dance around them. The music is cheerful, but the imagery includes coffins, body parts, haunted machinery, and characters repeatedly falling apart before rebuilding themselves. Parents' groups reportedly objected to the grotesque designs and comic violence. By current standards, the action is mild, but a modern preschool network might still question the constant jokes involving burial imagery, dismemberment-style slapstick, and characters whose physical differences are the punchline. The larger concern would be repetition. Monsters insult one another's faces, bodies, voices, and intelligence almost constantly. Nobody appears seriously hurt, yet cruelty is presented as friendly communication. Filmation later crossed the Ghoulies with Daffy Duck and Porky Pig in a television special. The result combined Filmation's stiff movement with Warner characters famous for fluid theatrical animation, producing a visual collision that still feels impossible. 16 original episodes were made. Their songs are catchy, the jokes are proudly terrible, and the entire show resembles a Halloween party organized by people who had never attended one. Number 5. Lassie's Rescue Rangers, 1973. America's most trusted collie suddenly found herself battling organized criminals, retrieving dangerous packages, stopping looters, confronting saboteurs, and surviving natural disasters. Lassie worked beside the Turner family and a team of animals connected to a forest rescue service. The animals did not speak, which gave the show a slightly more serious atmosphere than Filmation's other productions. Their personalities appeared through movement, expressions, and teamwork. Then the stories became astonishingly intense. In The Animals Are Missing, criminals capture the rescue animals because they need them to enter a dangerous underground location and retrieve packages containing an illegal substance. Lassie and her friends are placed in direct danger by adults involved in organized trafficking. Other episodes involve explosives carried by survivors of an aircraft accident, a blackout accompanied by looting, imprisoned medical workers, robot duplicates committing robberies, sabotage at a rodeo, and a tidal wave threatening Florida. The contrast is unbelievable. One moment, families are watching a friendly dog. The next, that dog is uncovering serious criminal activity that many modern children's programs would approach only through carefully reviewed educational storytelling. The series was criticized even during its original broadcast. Lassie's trainer, Rudd Weatherwax, rejected the interpretation, and the National Association of Broadcasters reportedly condemned its combination of violence, crime, and foolish behavior. Its most famous scenes are not graphic, but the danger feels unusually real. Lassie cannot deliver a comforting speech. She can only bark, struggle against restraints, and lead the animals toward escape while the criminals close in. Number 4. Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle, 1975. For many viewers, this was one of Filmation's best action cartoons. It was also built upon a character whose entire history carries arguments about colonial fantasy, race, power, and the Western invention of an imaginary Africa. The series attempted to remain closer to Edgar Rice Burroughs' stories than many live-action adaptations. Tarzan spoke clearly rather than using broken English, traveled through lost cities, confronted advanced civilizations, and used words inspired by the fictional Mangani language. Each adventure opened with Tarzan moving through the jungle, while the narration established his extraordinary relationship with the animals. The famous cry followed, echoing over reused shots of trees, cliffs, and running creatures. One memorable episode, Tarzan and the Colossus of Zome, places him against an enormous artificial warrior. The machine moves through the jungle like an unstoppable ancient weapon, while Tarzan searches for the intelligence controlling it. The imagery mixes lost world fantasy, technology, ruins, and physical combat. The series frequently presented isolated tribes, hidden kingdoms, mysterious rulers, and civilizations waiting for Tarzan to solve their problems. Even when local characters were intelligent or powerful, the white outsider usually became the moral center and final authority. That structure would require fundamental changes today. A modern series would need specific African settings, characters with independent goals, local languages, and stories not built around a single outsider commanding the environment. Animal encounters would also be handled differently. Tarzan fights predators, orders creatures into danger, and survives physical situations that young viewers could easily imitate without understanding the risk. Number 3. The New Adventures of Flash Gordon, 1979. A rocket crashes on Mongo. Armed creatures surround the survivors, and the ruler of an entire planet decides that Dale Arden should belong to him. Filmation's adaptation is still considered one of the more faithful screen versions of Alex Raymond's space adventure. Flash, Dale, and Dr. Zarkov travel across Mongo, uniting lion men, hawkmen, forest kingdoms, and other civilizations against Ming the Merciless. The first season operates almost like one continuous serial. Flash escapes imprisonment, only to enter another dangerous region. Dale is captured. Zarkov builds or repairs impossible machines, and Ming sends robots, soldiers, beasts, and aircraft after the growing rebellion. A famous early sequence shows the hero's ship attacked before crashing into Mongo's ocean. Gil Men sees the survivors, and the story begins moving through one near-fatal situation after another without slowing down. For a Saturday morning cartoon, the scale feels enormous. The central problem is Ming. The character originated in imagery shaped by Western fears and stereotypes about Asian rulers. His name, appearance, clothing, facial design, and imperial behavior carry associations that a modern children's production could not ignore. Other civilizations are presented through similarly broad labels: lion people, lizard women, beast men, witch women, and hawk men. Their entire societies are often defined by one physical feature and one political leader. Dale receives moments of courage, yet plots repeatedly use her capture or Ming's interest in her to motivate Flash. A contemporary adaptation would give her greater control over the rebellion rather than treating her as a prize contested by powerful men. Number 2. Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids, 1972. Few Saturday morning cartoons moved from jokes to serious social problems as quickly as this one. Fat Albert led the Junkyard Gang through stories about friendship, school, health, discrimination, honesty, family conflict, personal hygiene, and responsibility. The children often built instruments from discarded objects and performed a song explaining the episode's lesson. Then the series entered territory most cartoons avoided. Episodes addressed smoking, dangerous substances, weapons, abuse, racism, kidnapping, gambling, unsafe driving, loss, and other issues affecting real communities. The educational purpose was sincere, and the series received recognition for trying to help children confront problems they might actually encounter. In one disturbing story, a student begins making dangerous choices after becoming involved with an illegal substance. Another character is briefly tempted before seeing the immediate consequences. Adults and authorities become involved, and the episode ends by emphasizing recovery and asking for help. Another episode follows a child carrying his father's firearm to impress friends. The weapon is believed to be empty, but a remaining round causes a serious hand injury. The scene avoids graphic detail, yet the shock, panic, and guilt are unusually intense for Saturday morning. Modern educational programs still discuss these topics. What would change is the delivery. Current writers would use more precise language, provide resources, avoid simplistic solutions, and show that recovery or trauma cannot always be resolved before the credits. Number 1. Brave Star, 1987. No Filmation cartoon better represents the difference between old children's television and modern broadcast caution. Set on the distant planet New Texas, the series combined science fiction with Western mythology. Marshal Bravestar protected miners and settlers from Tex Hex and other criminals while using the strength of the bear, speed of the puma, eyes of the hawk, and ears of the wolf. His partner, 3030, was a cybernetic horse who could stand upright, speak, and use an enormous energy weapon. Fort Carium looked like an Old West settlement, surrounded by alien technology, while conflicts over valuable Carium echoed frontier stories about gold, land, and law. Most episodes delivered harmless adventure, followed by a moral. Then came The Price. A young character named Jay meets a dealer offering a substance called spin. What begins as curiosity develops into dependency. Jay steals valuable Carium from his mother and continues using the substance despite obvious changes in his health and behavior. Brave Star investigates the supply operation, while Jay's friends and family slowly understand what is happening. Unlike many educational cartoons, the episode does not allow the hero to arrive in time and restore everything. The most famous scene occurs near the end. Brave Star and the adults find Jay after the substance has overwhelmed him. His mother arrives, but her son does not survive. There is no magical reversal, hidden rescue, or final joke. The characters are left grieving, while the story explains that certain choices can carry permanent consequences. Filmation cartoons were stiff, colorful, preachy, creative, and far bolder than people remember. Some opened doors for representation. Others carried stereotypes, frightening plots, and ideas that belong firmly to their era. But boring? Never. Which forgotten Filmation show shocked you most, and which one deserves a careful modern reboot? Like, share, and subscribe, because the strangest corners of Saturday morning television are still waiting to be reopened.